Welcome to Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. We're talking today about what's going on Capitol Hill and around the country. Our guest is Congressman Jim Banks. He represents the 3rd Congressional District in Indiana. It's in the northeastern part of the state. Fort Wayne is one of the bigger places, the biggest place in the district, and is one of the biggest manufacturing districts per capita in the country. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mark, good to be with you.
You got back to D.C. Just last night, so I want to ask you, if I drove around your district with you now, how would things look as compared to pre the pandemic?
Well, things are coming back to life throughout Northeast Indiana. People are out and about. They're going to stores. They're going to restaurants. The traffic isn't nearly as heavy as it was pre-pandemic, but there is optimism in the air. People are getting out of their homes and going around other people, and you're getting a sense that things are just like a change in the seasons. Things are starting to come back to life at the moment.
What's your sense of in your district and maybe around the country, if you have it, of what consumer demand is like now, and you think it's going to be like into the fall?
Well, there's been a lot of pent up demand, so you see people going out, and I've experienced it myself. I mean, my wife sends me to Costco at least twice a week, and when I go, there's always a long line, and whether it's usually the big box stores that you're seeing in a place like Northeast Indiana, the Costco's, the Targets, those types of stores, that there's a lot of pent up demand, so there are long lines. Those stores are continuing, especially the large corporate brands are continuing to implement social distancing and other new norms as part of their customer experience. So I think people are trying to figure it out, and that's been my personal experience as I've gotten out and about in the last couple of weeks.
Indiana overall has seen a decline in all the areas we'd like to see declines regarding hospitalizations and deaths and positive tests. What's the situation in your district, and how concerned are people about community spread now that people are back out and about?
People are ready to get out, get back to normal. Again, a lot of pent up frustration about being homebound for a couple of months or more. In our case, I think what I find, Mark, in my district is largely outside of Fort Wayne. It's a very rural district, and the frustration is often directed at government officials for not recognizing that the small town that I live in, a population of less than 10,000 people, is a lot different than Fort Wayne, which is a lot different than Indianapolis, which is a lot different than New York or Washington, D.C. So there's a sense that in a place like rural Northeast Indiana, there's not a lot of concern about a resurgence of the virus, of cases going back up again. So in fact, we've seen the decline, and our governor implemented a phased approach that's been in effect now for over a couple of weeks, and we haven't seen the negative consequences of that where we come from.
In the fall in Northeast Indiana, will there be public school, and probably at least as important, will there be basketball?
Yeah, it's going to be a mixed bag. We have some school superintendents in the Fort Wayne area who are raising the prospect of maybe not coming back to school in the fall. That's very frustrating to parents. I can tell you, my wife, who takes care of our 3 daughters most of the time, and myself as well, as we watch our daughters endure the horrible experience that they endure every day with the distance learning situation. We're better off than most people are, we recognize, but that unfulfilling experience that they're having, a lot of parents out there that they're desperate for their kids to go back into a classroom and experience good teachers and good schools and getting a good education in the fall. So there's a lot of anxiety about this, but again, what I anticipate is that you're going to see smaller districts and smaller communities and rural areas go back to school in the fall. And then we're hearing a lot of rumors about different larger school districts in urban centers trying a different approach. Maybe some students and some grades go one day, other grades go another day. I contend that we can't get America back to work if we don't get our kids back in the classroom. I mean, our economy is built around parents going to work during the day while their kids are in school. on top of everything else. So it's important, I believe, that we work hard to open the doors of our schools in the fall. And I believe Northeast Indiana is going to do that as well as anywhere else in the country.
How about basketball? Is that feasible to have men, boys, and girls on the courts in close quarters?
I hope so. Well, a lot of stories about high school and college football teams in Indiana that are talking about getting back on the field in the fall. And if football players and football programs can figure it out, I'm sure in Indiana we can figure out basketball as well. So while we talk about that, and basketball is so inherent to who we are as Hoosiers, it's also important to our society that we get back to a normal nature of competition, especially among students at high school and college age. And there's been a lot of talk in recent days about Mitch Daniels leading the way at Purdue University as sort of becoming maybe the biggest example of collegiate leadership in America, of a college president saying we are going to open our classrooms, we are going to open our college campus in the fall, and sort of laying out a roadmap of how to do that. A big part of doing that is restoring competition and collegiate sports in that process as well. And I imagine nobody's going to do that, but I'm a graduate of Indiana University, the chief rival of the Purdue Boilermakers, but there's no better college or college president or better leadership in America and at the university level than there is Mitch Daniels at Purdue University. He's going to provide a case study on how to get this done.
He has, and he's an extraordinary leader, and he's done a great job managing the school and preparing it for this moment, obviously not knowing that it was coming. The other thing, though, about his school, which he alluded to in an article he wrote for the Washington Post about the Purdue plan, is they've got you know how big the Purdue endowment is?
I know it's significant because of Mitch Daniel.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but Mitch Daniel.
It's over $2 billion. So that allows them some, flexibility in terms of setting up the infrastructure and the testing and everything else. So I'm wondering what you think about it. It is a good example in many ways, certainly attitudinally, but for the community colleges and the trade schools in your district, how can they do the same kinds of things that are required to not only open up safely, but to give parents and students and teachers the confidence that they're going to be safe?
Yeah, another good example is the small private Christian college where I have my MBA from in Winona Lake, Indiana, in my district. Grace College and Theological Seminary also has
smaller endowment,
a very small endowment especially compared to Purdue. But just like President Daniels, the president of Grace College, has announced that they will be opening up in the fall as well, and trying to apply the same type of pathway to do that. But it's going to take liability reforms that Congress needs to pass. That's a big subject. I've had 3 or 4. We haven't gone onto the floor of the House yet to vote, but I've been having a lot of Zoom calls and conference calls with my colleagues, especially Republican colleagues. And the number one subject that is talked about on all of those conference calls is liability protections for institutions of whether it's educational institutions or businesses. That's got to be a big piece of the puzzle that we have to provide, something that Congress can and should do immediately.
Obviously, there's lots of issues pending now with the Democrats in the House having passed a very large spending bill about whether we're going to get to any major piece of legislation. I just want to ask you a question about that liability issue. Some have floated the notion of, yes, there needs to be greater liability, but it should only be extended to organizations, businesses, and colleges and other organizations that meet a certain set of thresholds so that you get the liability, but first you got to prove that you're keeping things safe. Is that kind of compromise make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm open to anything to get done what we have to do to restore civil society in America, to get our economy working again, to open up our institutions of all sorts. So whatever that might look like, this is where it takes leadership on Capitol Hill. Republicans talking to Democrats and working with the president to pass something. And I'm encouraged today because it is the top topic in every conversation that I have with my colleagues. What does it look like? I don't know, and I don't serve on the Judiciary Committee or the relevant committees of jurisdiction, but I can tell you that every business in my district, every college or school in my district, every institution in my district is begging for these types of liability protections. And that conversation needs to happen now so that we can get back on track as soon as possible.
lastly, Congressman, I want to ask you about China. It's an area I know you think a lot about. Has what's happened with the pandemic fundamentally changed the contours, the shape of the U.S.-Chinese relationship?
No doubt about it. You've seen the public polling in recent weeks. Largely, the American population blames China for the pandemic, and the outcry of that is demanding that their representatives in the House and the Senate and the President do something to address it. That's why Kevin McCarthy created the China Task Force as an outcome of that to help the President and the administration develop a whole of government approach to containing China and addressing the China threat. So this will be a chief topic, not just in the nation's capital as we deal with China-related issues economically and militarily. It's going to be a chief topic in the upcoming 2020 election as well in November, as you see Republicans run against Democrats on their China record. You're going to see a president run against a former vice president based on their records on China as well. So stay tuned to that and buckle your seatbelt, because it's going to be all about China all the time between now and the November general election.
Would you describe China as a rival, an adversary? How would you describe them now?
No doubt about it. I would use both of those terms, and pleased that when President Trump became president, the national security strategy that was developed by this administration for the first time named China and Russia as our near-peer competitors, and challenged our national security approach from the Pentagon to shift from CENTCOM-centric conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan toward the nature of the broader threat that we face, especially as related to China. So I serve on the Armed Services Committee, and much of our work is on that committee is related to building up our military to meet the Chinese military capabilities and the threat militarily. But we need Congress to come together, whether it's Financial Services, Ways and Means Committee, other committees of jurisdiction, to look at ways that we can combat the rising China threat as well. I mean, whether or not this is you want to call this the new Cold War or not, I believe that we're definitely heading in that direction, and not of our own making. This has been a concerted effort on the part of the Chinese Communist Party, directed at the United States. It's been a long time coming that America will develop our own strategy to counteract it.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana's 3rd Congressional District. Always like to hear about what's going on back home and also in Washington. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more Wide World of News in the coming days. Same bad time, same bad channel. See you soon.